Today, it's all about vulnerability because if you didn't know, now you do. So for some of you, being vulnerable, it's the equivalent of the F word. You know what I'm talking about. You totally avoid it inside of your personal relationships and definitely avoid it inside your business because like who wants to be vulnerable in either of those places? But I'm going to show you today how and why it's super important if you really want to succeed. I'm going to give you 3 reasons why being vulnerable is the thing to be inside of business and your relationships. Stay tuned. I'm Nando Rodriguez, breakthrough coach, and I exclusively work with remarkable entrepreneur women who experience imposter syndrome and that whole world of self-sabotage. And if you're interested in working with me, hit me up either in the link in the description below or on Instagram, which is the fastest way, and we'll set something up. Listen, whether it's a relationship issue or whether it's inside your entrepreneurship journey, right? Being vulnerable makes you relatable. A lot of us have it that being vulnerable is a sign of weakness. Like, why would you want to work with someone who's vulnerable? That's what I'm here for, to show you and to get you to reframe that mindset of yours because that is a limited belief. And once you watch this video, you're going to leave me a comment that says, mind blown. Reason number 1, it's embracing the vulnerability in the first place. Now, there's a difference between passive vulnerability and active vulnerability. So passive vulnerability is when you show up in a situation, business or personal, where there's really no space for it. It doesn't move the conversation forward. You kind of put something in the space that leaves like, that was a little bit weird, right? That's how the majority of you see being vulnerable. Right? Like you're going through something and then you share it in a business meeting. That might not be the place to share it, right? Yes, you're being vulnerable, but does it actually contribute to the mission? That's actually called passive vulnerability, right? What I want you to focus on is active vulnerability. And that's when you know what you're about to say makes an impact. You know about what you're going to share is actually going to move the conversation forward. So I want to give you an example. You all have heard of the Dyson vacuum cleaner, right? Well, did you know that it took him over 5,000 prototypes? That's over 5,000 failures before he landed on the prototype that actually he put on the market and is super successful that you know and I know today, right? And so he is so fond of saying that an inventor's, is it inventor? The inventor. So Mr. Dyson himself is super fond of saying that the inventor and entrepreneur's life is one of failure. So whenever they talk about the Dyson vacuum cleaner, they have to bring up the fact that they did over 5,000 prototypes, right? So some people might see it as that's a weakness, but how? When at the end, the result was that's how many times it took. That's how dedicated they were. That's how committed they were to their mission. So while you can look at it from the other side, that's a little bit of a weakness. They didn't have that many smart folks. Or you could see it from the side of they were trying to get it right and they got it right. That's what I'm talking about when I say active vulnerability. So I want you to think, where right now in your business or personal life are you being actively vulnerable or passively vulnerable? There is a difference between the two. Now I want to talk to you about the inner critic. The inner critic will have you say no when an opportunity for vulnerability shows up. Why? Again, because you're actually thinking of the passive vulnerability, right? The inner critic is always going to shut things down. And it's going to be sending you messages like, don't share. They're going to think you weak. They're going to think you don't know what you're doing. They're going to know you don't belong here, right? And that actually all falls under the umbrella of imposter syndrome. You know, when you're kind of like waiting for the tap on the shoulder for someone to say, hey, you don't belong here. Only real entrepreneurs or only real experts belong here. That's the inner critic. And if you want to show up vulnerable, you're going to have to learn to shut that inner critic's voice out. You're going to have to shut it down, right? Otherwise, you're going to keep doing what you're doing. And remember, vulnerability creates relatability. And when you're relatable, you're profitable. The third thing to keep in mind and why you want to introduce vulnerability into your personal relationships or your business is because it makes you sick if you don't. All right. A recent study was done on these entrepreneurs, right? And what ended up happening was because they were not being true to their feelings, because they were not listening to their feelings, they were stuffing the stress. You don't want to stuff stress, right? What ended up happening is that 41% of these entrepreneurs immediately went straight into burnout, right? And that's what's going to happen to you. And listen, this is why marriages fail. This is why businesses fail. It's that inability to be vulnerable. Listen, when you're vulnerable, when you show up to the conversation vulnerable and you put it in first, it creates that empty space for the other person to jump in and be vulnerable along with you. Okay? You can't expect it, but you definitely want to contribute it to the conversation because it's going to move things forward. I'm telling you, when you're not vulnerable in your relationships, nothing moves. And same thing goes for your business. When you're not vulnerable, own up to a mistake, own up to a failure with your clients, they don't trust you. You lose trust. And as you know, people have to know you, like you, trust you to buy from you. All right, everyone, today I really wanted to bring home the message of being vulnerable, and I know that you got it, right? Leave me a message and let me know what part resonated with you the most. And if you liked this video, just give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and definitely go and share it with other folks, right? And let me know, how are you going to show up vulnerable in your business or in your personal life? I'm so excited to hear. I will see you next time. My name is Nando. I'm a breakthrough coach, and I'm here to make your life sexier.